There we go. Recording in progress. Super duper. Okay, so now I feel like the pressure's on me because we're recording this. Okay, so let's start going through those scenarios together and start figuring out how we can mentally rehabilitate post-stroke and post-brain injury. So the first scenario that we went through previously was put a finger down if you ever felt or feel like a different person post-brain injury. If you've ever heard me talk before, I'm sure you've heard me say that I believe there is no such thing as post you. I understand how you can divide yourself up like that, but as soon as you start identifying yourself as identity pre-stroke and identity post-stroke, now you've created two static identities. And I don't believe identity is static ever in your life. Identity is completely flexible. I've actually made the argument that I don't even know if we have any identity, right? Because when you feel like you don't have an identity, you feel like you need to subscribe to certain things in life to be happy. But if you let yourself flow a little bit more and just kind of take things as they come, you put a lot less pressure on yourself and you feel like you don't need to be a certain person. I've said before when people say, you know, I don't feel like myself pre-brain injury. I didn't feel like myself. I don't feel like myself the way I was when I was 13. I don't feel like the way I was when I was 20. I'm 28 now. Like, you're changing every single day. So to simplify your life so much between pre and post brain injury, I don't think you're doing yourself any favors. I would be doing myself a favor. And so just being mindful of the way you speak about yourself in that way, I think can do so much good as far as seeing yourself as a more fluid person and not putting pressure on yourself to act in a certain way. The next point is your identity is human. So I did make the argument in the past that sometimes I don't like to think of myself as having any identity but being human, because that's exactly what I am. Everything else these are just things that I do. I used to identify myself as a soccer player and an athlete pre-stroke. And then after my stroke, I felt like I couldn't be those things in the same way. Therefore, I was no longer identifying myself as a soccer player and an athlete. And that depressed me a lot. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter how well I can do those things. It just matters that I enjoy them and I try. So yeah, I think I could say, you know, number one, or option one, I'm always going to identify myself as a soccer player and an athlete. Or option number two, these are just things that I'm doing and not necessarily an identity. So you can figure out what kind of verbiage works best for you. And the second scenario that we went through was put a finger down if you've ever been told you're fine or you're recovered when you didn't actually feel that way. I think I have the words "you're fine" burned into my brain from so many people saying it, because I looked fine and I was very, very grateful that I did physically rehabilitate quickly, being so young, but I did not feel fine. I felt like a totally different person. And so when people, particularly people that are in medical positions or are supposed to be a credible voice, or just anybody that you may look up to, when they're telling you these things, I know for me, I felt, do I believe them? Am I actually fine? Is this how I'm going to be forever? Is this what fine looks like? My new fine? Because for me, if that was my new fine post-stroke, fine sucked. And so eventually, because all these people were saying you're fine, I just came to believe that my new fine was going to be a very depressing life. And I wasn't doing myself any favors by believing that. And I think if anybody is telling you that, I would encourage you to respond by saying, I do not feel fine. And then hopefully that person can even help you out or point you in the right direction. So let's talk about what is recovery. Because the other phrase is, you look recovered. I started this PowerPoint by saying that we're going to be talking about mental rehab. That's not really a phrase that I ever heard when I was rehabilitating post-brain injury. It was always physical recovery, physical rehab. But when your mental health is damaged, wouldn't you want to recover that as well? Wouldn't you want to rehabilitate that? So that's a phrase that I like to use, and I hope that more people start adopting it. So recovery to me used to be, while I was in the hospital, while they were measuring my physical recovery, on a scale of 1 to 10, or on a percentage scale, how recovered do you feel? And there was a point in my life where I eventually was saying, I'm 99% recovered, but I'm never going to be fully recovered again. I'm never going to be 100%. And at the time, I thought that was super, because 99%, that's an A plus, right? But the more I said that, the more I realized that I was never going to get that final 1% back again. And the more I focused on that, the more I got depressed about the situation. And again, I wasn't doing myself any favors based on the way I was looking at recovery. So what I did was I changed the way I saw recovery. And now, although I understand there are definitely certain reasons for using different metrics, for me now, because it's been so many years, I see recovery as just, if I wake up in the morning and I give 100% effort in my day, I'm 100% recovered. Doesn't matter what the outcomes of my efforts are. If I'm giving 100%, I feel 100% recovered. And the next day I start all over. I don't think it's fair to just always think about, things that you're never possibly going to get back, or the things that are going to take longer to physically rehabilitate. Think, give yourself some credit, and by measuring your recovery based on your effort, I think the motivation factor is definitely going to go up. Talking about physical recovery, it's crazy that I still hear doctors and people in the medical field saying that, you only have 6 months to recover. It absolutely breaks my heart when I hear people tell me that. Science has shown time and time again through clinical trials, studies, that you can regain function, maybe not to the same extent as before, but you can improve through intentional repetitions, through focus and movement over and over and over again. And if you are getting discouraged about not recovering or improving as quick as you want to, you can I recommend reaching out to a support group. They're called Modus Nova. They're a company, they make rehabilitation robotics. They're available in the States, but they have a support group on Facebook that anybody can join. And you're going to find a lot of other people who are probably going through a very similar thing as you. And I'm part of that group. It could be incredibly, incredibly motivating. Or just message me, and I would be happy to help motivate you. As far as feeling fine, I have my story there, but I guess I already told it. You're the one that decides when you feel fine. Something that I was telling somebody last week was, you are the only person who has ever felt how you feel. Like, my mom has never felt my feelings, like she feels her feelings and I don't feel hers. I know how my body works. I knew when I had a headache that day that something wasn't right. I know when I don't feel good. I know when I don't feel fine. So please do not let somebody else dictate that for you. You're the only person that knows how you feel, how you think, and when things are feeling right. So you are going to be the one to make those decisions. And then finally, recovery versus self-improvement. Now, some people say, recovery, you're going to be in recovery for the rest of your life. And some people find that incredibly motivating. For me, I changed my definition of recovery, but at the same time, now I just like to think of everything I do as self-improvement. Because really, where is the line? Where is the line where recovery ends and then self-improvement just begins? I can work every day on my memory. Before, when I had my stroke, I had really bad short-term memory, like Dory from Finding Nemo. And eventually, I worked and time went by to the point that I recovered my memory. But there was eventually a point where I realized, oh, I can keep going. Like, I can hone in on the skill and I can really build my memory. I actually have a YouTube video on my channel about a trick that I use called the Mind Palace to help you remember things in conversations, grocery lists, anything short term. So just think about, these lines, they're blurred. And if they're blurred, why do we have certain words for describing certain situations? Feel free to change those up and see what works best for you. Then the third thing we went through was put a finger down if you've ever experienced cognitive and or physical challenges post brain injury, but you never spoke up when they occurred because you wanted to seem normal. Oof, this one is a good one, because I know to this day I struggle with this so much. I was, again, just speaking with somebody last week, and they asked me, what's one of your pet peeves post brain injury? And I said, for me, I'm very lucky that my deficits, which, by the way, if you don't know, are mostly cognitive, coordination is a big one. So it just takes a little bit longer for me to go through things in my head. So oftentimes when somebody's giving me instructions, I'll be looking at them like, and then a couple seconds later it kicks in because I'm just thinking. I don't even realize I'm staring blankly into space. My pet peeve, because these things aren't so noticeable that somebody might think, oh, okay, she had a brain injury. But they are so noticeable that they stand out. It's a huge pet peeve of mine when somebody says, are you okay? Or are you drunk? Because I walk into things a lot, or I lose my balance. And it's in those moments where I should probably say, oh, I'm just facing some challenges as a result of a brain injury. But oftentimes I don't say anything because I just want to be normal. Yeah, I'm fine. What are you talking about? Oh, ha ha ha, I just lost my balance. I'm not drunk. But there's nothing wrong with me being honest. And something that I had actually mentioned in one of our past support groups with Life After Stroke was, we're doing this advocacy work, or we're all here because we want to make sure other people are comfortable talking about brain injury, whether it be our friends, our colleagues, our bosses, teachers, whoever it may be. But if we're not comfortable talking about brain injuries ourselves, our own injuries, other people are never going to get comfortable with it. So you have to make sure that you are speaking up for yourself. But again, to my previous point on the other, or actually it'll be the next point, you're not playing the victim card. You're just being honest. And by explaining and advocating for your situation, what that is doing is helping people just understand other people better. That's what advocacy is, right? That's what it means to raise awareness. Of course, it's unrealistic for every single person to have a full understanding of every disease, every problem, every possible illness in the world that somebody can go through. But by raising a little bit of awareness, you can at least open somebody's eyes, or your own eyes to somebody else's problem. And so that when you interact, you just have a little bit more empathy for that person, a little bit more understanding for where they're coming from, or vice versa. They're going to understand your situation a little bit better. We can't force people to understand what we're going through, because really at the end of the day, if they haven't gone through it, they won't understand. But just little gentle reminders and standing up for yourself I think, is going to do you a lot of good for sure. The next point is actually, I guess the first point, I didn't really go through that. Challenge yourself at a reasonable level. As I mentioned, yeah, we don't want to play the victim card. Nobody wants to play the victim card. Nobody wants to be pitied or, have people do stuff for them. We're humans and we're working through our own challenges. And so it's also okay to challenge yourself at a reasonable level. So something I don't like to say is that I have deficits post-brain injury. Again, everybody is different. Every definition is different. Every problem, or I don't want to use the word problem, but every outcome of a brain injury is different. For me, I don't like to use the word deficit. I like to use the word challenge. And I think when it was a little bit more acute, I would use the word impairment. There's actually a book, if you guys haven't read, I'm sure I have it behind me. Norman Deutsch, The Brain That Changes Itself. I'll type it in the chat if anybody's interested. Norman Deutsch, The Brain That Changes Itself. And geez, I'm not sure if it was Norman. Yes, Julie has that book. Such a good book. I think it was Taub, Dr. Taub, one of the doctors that he speaks about in the book, who studies stroke and physical rehabilitation. And he also had a stroke late in his life. He doesn't use the word deficit. He doesn't use the word disability. He uses the word impairment. Just because it motivates him more, it makes him feel like he can still do things. He just has challenges with certain things. So yeah, play with different words and just see what works best for you. I get distracted. So The Brain That Changes Itself. There we go, in the chat. Yes, Maggie, such a good book. Actually, I'm going to ask a question. Does anybody else have the other book? I don't know if this is the same or just an expanded version, but there's The Brain That Changes Itself, and this is The Brain's Way of Healing. Has anybody read this one? Is it by Norman? Yes, okay, you read it. Okay, super. Is it just as good, worth the read, Maggie? I don't know how long ago. And you have both too. Okay, super. Oh, yes. I bought it and I was like, is this the same book? But then I brought it home. I'm like, definitely different, but I haven't read the second one yet. So now I'm looking forward to it because you guys are saying good things. So super awesome. I will definitely take a peek. Okay. Yeah, challenge yourself to a reasonable level. And then that leads me to the next point, which is, again, I think something we spoke about a couple support groups ago. It's okay to set high expectations for yourself, but don't punish yourself when you don't meet them. I think, Laura, maybe that was something that you had mentioned. Forgive me if it was somebody else, but I absolutely love that quote. So I made sure to write it down. And, for me,
sorry.
No,
so
go
what
ahead.
I say is that it's important to set mini goals, because you set a long-term goal. Plus, the other thing is that nobody's standing there with a stopwatch, checking to see, I have to do this by Christmas, or I have to do this by Easter, I have to do this by this date. Like, who's standing there doing that? And nobody. So when you set dates for things, if you say, I want to be able to do whatever, that's a great goal. But if it's something that's really far away from where you are at the moment, if you say, okay, I'm going to do that, but that's maybe it's unrealistic today, but maybe not unrealistic down the road, then set mini goals towards getting there. If you want to walk a mile,
yeah,
and you can only walk for 5 minutes at a time, well, it's going to take you a long time to get to a mile.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's going to take time. And maybe you want to set goals for yourself where you're walking, 10 meters, and then, or maybe we should keep the metric. If I say a kilometer instead of a mile, whatever, if you want to,
Thank you for the conversion.
Yeah, get the conversion. But yeah, then you set mini goals. I'm going to do 10 meters. I'm going to get to 20 meters. I'm going to get to 30 meters, so on and so forth. So that you get closer and closer each day to that end goal, but yet you're setting goals. Yeah, okay, by the end of this week, or not by some point in the next week, month, year, whatever, however long it's going to take, I want to get to, I'm going to try and get to the 10 meters. and therefore it's not like it's attainable.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and therefore you can have something to celebrate. You got many celebrations along the way to your long-term goal.
That's a great point. Many celebrations. If you guys on that note also want to look up the Huberman Lab podcast on YouTube or anywhere podcasts are found. I like YouTube because I like the visual. Dr. Andrew Huberman, he talks a lot about setting these mini goals and how you're initiating the dopaminergic effect when you do set these mini goals and celebrate them after. Because the key is celebrating them. Like you walk those 10 meters and then you have to go ahead and pat yourself on the back and be like, heck yes, go me. Let's do another 10. You're actually chemically motivating yourself when you do that. So I highly, highly encourage you guys to give that a go. And again, I wrote in the chat the Huberman Lab podcast. They are very long. So if you want something shorter, I would just do any interview with Andrew Huberman. You'll hear basically a really good summary, and those podcasts are usually 30 minutes to an hour, depending on which one you find. But yeah, so, and if you want to feel like you're challenging yourself and you're setting those expectations high, that's fine. I love setting high expectations for myself. I love pushing myself. But when I don't meet those expectations, which happens pretty frequently because I like to set them high, I no longer punish myself for not being able to do that or not being able to meet them. And I say no longer because that is something I did pretty much my whole life. And now I just try to look at things a little bit differently. Again, I'm looking at my effort, not necessarily the outcome of my effort. Because if the effort is there and I'm applying it consistently, the outcome's going to happen. Maybe not the first time, maybe not the second time, maybe not even the 100th time, depending on what you're doing, right? So just measure the effort versus the outcome. And I think your mood is really going to change with that as well. I'm going to read the comments here as well. Thank you. Oh, everyone's coming with comments. I love it. My Stroke of Insight by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. Yes, she rocks. Karen. Oh, yeah, same book. Tandra and James for reading. After my stroke, I have less ambition to read books. Does anyone feel similar? This is a really great question. If anybody wants to chime in, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead. If not, I definitely have a point as well.
You could always do an audiobook. I know, like my Stroke of Insight, not the Norman one. What's it called?
Norman Doidge, Brain That Heals.
Yes, I'm listening to that now.
Okay.
So that might be a good one because I love to read, but I can't at the moment read a full book. So I've been doing audiobooks. So I found that was helpful.
Awesome. And which do you use a certain platform for the audiobooks?
I have a subscription to Audible, but then I've also gotten books off of like the Libby app, which is like all libraries.
Okay, that's cool.
So you could try that. I don't know. But I've gotten a lot of books through like Libby on that.
Awesome. Libby.
So but
Audible.
like they don't have Maddie's book, that what's it? Fast Forward.
Oh, Maddie's book, yeah, Fast Forward. I have it behind me here too. Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't think they have that. You can get it on Audible, but you can't get it on Libby. So I kind of like bounce back and forth between the two.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, that's a good. I never heard of Libby. Yeah, definitely check that out, James. I know my mom uses another one called Chirp. I just wrote a couple in the chat there. You can probably check that one out as well. Yeah, I think it depends on how much you want to pay and what books are available, that sort of thing. So that's a really good tip. One thing that I like doing is even listening and having the book at the same time. And another thing that I do to help motivate me with reading, because I don't like, I have problems with coordination. So sometimes, like, for a brief second, like words and letters will switch and I'll just read something as like transmission. Like maybe I'll read it as tradition and I'll get through a whole sentence or paragraph, like swapping words like that and be like, that doesn't make sense. And I'll have to go back and read it and be like, oh, if I slow down and really look at these different syllables, it says transmission. And so things do take a little bit longer for me as well. If you're able to read and it just takes a little bit longer or it's a little bit challenging, what I do is I have a goal of just reading 1 page a day. That is all. 1 page. That is literally my goal. You don't have to do 1 page a day. You can do 1 page every other day or whatever works for you. But what I do, I've really tried to make it a habit of mine in the morning is after I wake up, my alarm goes off and I read 1 page of a book. And that's all. I don't expect more of myself. So if I do end up reading a little bit more, then I'm really proud of myself. So when you set those, maybe lower the expectations, and that also might help motivate you as well to get through the book. Really good question. If you guys have other questions you want to type in, feel free to do that in the chat. Okay, and then the last point, again, I went over this. If we want people to feel comfortable and empathetic when they are talking to us about brain injury and trying to make accommodations or just friends trying to understand, we need to be okay talking about these things with them as well. All right. And next was put a finger down if you've ever felt like you're playing the victim card by explaining to someone that you have challenges post brain injury. If yes, have you ever repressed those feelings as a result? We kind of touched on this on the previous one, but let's go through these points. So if you feel like, or if you're worried, so this is how I usually feel. I'm worried that somebody else will think I'm playing the victim card. I know I'm not, right? I know I'm not playing the victim card, but I don't want other people to think that about me because I don't want to seem weak or I don't want to seem like I'm making excuses or asking for favors. But what I realized is that if somebody else thinks that, and I really am busting my butt to try and get whatever I can done and face my challenges, somebody else thinks that, not my problem. It is not my problem. If the other person you're dealing with is seriously so unempathetic that they would think that about you just because you are being honest, it's probably not somebody that you want to continue working with. So just remember, it is not your problem if somebody else thinks you're playing the victim card, but at the same time, you want to set reasonable expectations for yourself and be willing to face challenges. There is a reason for everything that you feel. So when it comes to repressing feelings, something that I did for the vast majority of my life up until my sort of breakthrough moment where I say I turned my rock bottom into my breakthrough and no longer repress my feelings. And I realized that's because everything I feel is for a reason. Whether that reason is valid or true is a different story. And that's a whole separate thing that needs to be addressed. But if I'm telling myself, ooh, this person thinks I'm playing the victim card, this person doesn't think I'm a hard worker, or this person does think I'm not a hard worker, and I become upset over that, well, that's for a reason. The reason's not true. The reason is not true. And so by me expressing my feelings and saying, I feel this because, that's actually a really good opportunity for then somebody else to come in, wherever I'm talking to, and say, well, did you talk to that person? Did they actually tell you that they think you're being a victim or trying to ask for sympathy? Then I might be thinking, oh, no, I didn't. I'm just assuming. And maybe my assumptions are just based out of fear. And that's not how that person thinks at all. Or maybe that's an opportunity for me to have a conversation with that person. So repressing your feelings, never a good thing in my opinion. I think there's always somebody that you can find who you can talk to about these things. Somebody who is credible and somebody who is honest and has your back. So I guess 3 things. And no matter what the outcome is, I think good will always come from expressing your feelings. Do not impose limitations on yourself. Okay, this is another good one. It's all about balance. I'm all about striking a really good balance between, if you haven't noticed yet, between challenging yourself, but being honest with yourself. That's going to be the constant balance you're going to search for. I think that anybody is really going to search for, brain injury or not. I think but along their journey of life, always striking a balance between being honest and challenging myself at the same time. So how do you do that? Well, one of the big things that I always try not to do for myself is imposing limitations. I mentioned in that book that one of those doctors, again, I think it was Edward Taub, that he doesn't use the word disability because for him, he doesn't find that empowering. He used the words impairment. Maybe for you, using the word disability is completely empowering. And you found a way to not impose those limitations on yourself. So instead of going into challenges thinking I cannot do this, this is where I draw the line. Figure out maybe you can do things differently instead of not doing them at all. Is there a way you can adapt instead of not doing things at all? So I always like to look for alternatives. And then we can talk about the term new normal. Again, this is another term that some people absolutely love, and they feel completely empowered by saying that they're living a new normal. And for me, I don't like that term. It's not empowering. I don't even like the word normal, to be honest. I feel like I'm in flux all the time, and every day I'm changing and wanting to improve. And this is just a different version of Ella. Like, I'm the same Ella. I'm Ella pre-stroke, post-stroke. I'm just Ella on a different day. So defining myself and creating such a static identity for myself, I don't think it's not very empowering for me. And it might not be empowering for you either. And then the next one was put a finger down if you've ever felt like a professional has misunderstood or dismissed your concerns post brain injury. This one, again, blows my mind. I can understand that just because you're a professional or an expert in one area, that does not mean you're a professional or expert in other areas. But you know what, you got to stand up for yourself. You got to find second opinions. Again, if you're not feeling fine, you got to voice that. You're the one that makes those decisions about whether or not you feel fine. And if you don't, something is missing. If you are fit, maybe you're physically fine, maybe you're even cognitively quote unquote fine. But if you still don't feel it, then that means that there's mentally, emotionally, then you have to seek help in that direction. Maybe you're not fine there. I felt that for myself as well. Physically, okay, I was fine. I really was. I didn't have anything. I could still go about my day-to-day life. Cognitively, even though I had some challenges, I was fine. But mentally, I was a mess. And so that's where I sought out some help. Okay, I'm just taking a little peek at the chat here. Some of them were private, so I'm not going to read them out. Do people have a psychiatrist following their recovery? It's a good question. If anyone wants to jump in there.
A physiatrist.
Oh, physiatrist. Wow. Okay. I can read.
Yeah, I guess someone told me that they follow, like you go, like all your doctors will go through them, because I'm having trouble with too many doctors and they keep passing me off to someone else, and that. So I was curious what people did.
Anybody, feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you have a physiatrist following your recovery.
I don't, Karen. I just have doctors that don't talk to each other, and I am the hub of information. So I have to, in whatever way I can, try to figure out what they said to me and what I need to tell the other person. you know?
That's what I'm running with, and I have short-term
crazy.
memory issues.
Yeah, it's
from a year out. So someone mentioned a physiatrist will manage all that.
Oh, that would be
like,
so nice.
So I didn't know if that
Where
was
are you?
actually
Where are you?
true and what people found.
Where are you located?
I am in Connecticut.
The States?
Connecticut.
Oh,
Oh,
Connecticut.
yeah, Connecticut. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm in Toronto, so I do not have yeah. I don't have anybody following my stuff. Maggie said she.
Unfortunately, I have the Veterans Administration, so I get whoever they assign to me.
Sorry, Brian, you do have somebody following? Or
Kinda.
kind of.
It's the VA Veterans Administration.
Oh,
so basically, whoever I'm given.
Okay.
It's kind of who I'm stuck with.
And Maggie, a physiatrist is sometimes also called a doctor of physical medicine rehabilitation. Okay, cool. Man, I know.
I mentioned that because I read a book called Stronger After Stroke, which is by Peter Levine. And he really recommends finding a physiatrist. And I was like, okay, I gotta find a physiatrist. Give me a physiatrist. Hey, hospital, I need a physiatrist, right? And I had one right after my inpatient time. And then I was an inpatient in Washington, D.C., and then I moved to Colorado, back to Colorado, where I'm from. And I was like, trying to find a physiatrist. And there were people at the hospital who did not know what that was, that word. So it's also sometimes known as a doctor of physical medicine and rehabilitation. So.
That's crazy. But again, I guess that goes to show, like, if you're an expert in one area, you don't know what a physiatrist is, I'm just a dietitian, I don't know, or like I'm just a social worker. Man, this might just be in the UK, but I thought I read something in the States, or I think I might have written an article about this for somebody. There's an app where they can hold all your medical information, and it doesn't go against HIPAA or anything. But it just makes, man, I should send it to you if I find it, Karen. Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. But yeah, just like holds all your medical information. It's an app. I swear I wrote just a freelance research article on this telehealth, I think it was, particular company. And I will find that and send it over to you. Okay. Cool. Yeah, and so speaking of doctors, be an advocate for your own health. Sometimes it's, wouldn't it be nice if there was sort of steps and rules and everything worked out so well when you said, I had a stroke, I had a brain injury, whatever it is, and they're like, okay, you're gonna go here, here, you're gonna talk to this person, and everyone's just amazing, and here's the recipe for recovery. But unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. And you have to be an advocate for your own health. You have to know when to change doctors. You have to know when to get a second opinion when things just aren't feeling right for you. And yeah, finally, when you do find that person, hopefully they make you feel like you are part of a productive team. That's ultimately what you want your team of doctors to be, productive, because you want your recovery to be productive. And I think when you find that, you're in the right place. And if you're not feeling it, again, feel comfortable and confident looking for a second opinion. So that was sort of the 5 scenarios. What I can do now is stop the recording, and you guys feel free to just have an open discussion and share any thoughts